Hey guys, it's Jessica from Peace Love Books, and today I'm here with my mid-May wrap-up. I don't know how we're already halfway through May. I'm filming this on the 15th, and I am planning on finishing a book today, but that's okay. I'm going to talk to you about the 20 books I have read in the first 15 days of May. I've read a lot because a few of these are Kindle novellas, so I got them from KU and they were pretty short, and so I think at least 3 of these were novellas. And then I have been an audiobook fiend. I have just been really into listening to my audiobooks that I will read an audiobook in 2 days, and so a lot of my reading has been audiobooks. Sometimes I just finish it in a day. I've had a lot to do where when I get home I can listen to audiobooks while I work on things, like when I'm sewing for my Etsy shop, mowing the lawn, walking my dogs. I like to, if I'm not working out, which I also listen to audiobooks during, I'll walk my dogs with my sister when I get home, and then I have yard work to do, and I just listen a lot. So I've got a lot to share with you. If I have a reading log for these, I will link that down below, but I'll go ahead and get to the books that I've read so far this month. So the first one was an audiobook, and that is Reckless by Selena Montgomery. And now, funny thing, this is actually Stacey Abrams' pen name. I didn't know that when I had reserved it from the library. I didn't know that until I put it as marked to read on Goodreads, because I was at Barnes & Noble and I was looking at books and the cover of this looked really good, and I was like, it's a romantic suspense. I love romantic suspenses and I want to read more of them. So I went to my library while I was at the bookstore and reserved it on Libby, and I noticed it had like a pretty long wait, and I was like, I don't think I've heard of this author before. And then I went on Goodreads and I was like, oh, it's Stacey Abrams, so it's her pen name. And this one was just okay to me. I ended up giving it 3 stars. Our main character, she is a lawyer, and she has recently gotten a phone call from the woman who pretty much raised her at this house, this home, because her parents gave her up, and this woman says she's in trouble, so she drops everything and goes to see her. And then the police officer in town pulls her over, I believe when she just arrived into town, and they did not hit it off at all, and they end up having to try to uncover things about this case together because someone is dead and they think it's going to be the woman that helped raise her, and so our main character is trying to prove it wasn't her. And it was okay. I expected more suspense in here. I'm just not into, let's go to this person, talk to them, and this person and talk to them, and this person and talk to them. And so I also like courtroom kind of drama things aren't really my thing, and so I gave this 3 out of 5 stars because it just wasn't something I loved. I expected a little bit more from it. The romance was fine, but I just wasn't loving reading this, so I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was for a reading vlog I did where I read 5 brand new releases. I won't spend too much time on these books, but I read The Dating Plan by Sarah Desai. This plot has a lot going on in it, and I think that was something that kind of detracted from it, because our heroine is a software engineer and she is at this huge conference, and her ex is there, and her ex is with her ex-boss, and so she's kind of feeling insecure about that and freaking out about it. And so she randomly makes out with the guy that stood her up to prom 10 years ago, who was her brother's best friend. He like didn't show up for prom and then like disappeared off the face of the earth. And so she and him end up having to fake date because, one, she's trying to make face with her ex, and then he needs to fake date because he needs to get married in order to inherit this distillery, because he doesn't get married, it goes to his brother, who's going to knock it down for like a car dealership business thing. And it was just like a lot going on, and I didn't love it. I thought the beginning was kind of interesting, but then I didn't love the romance that was happening. I didn't love how they wouldn't talk about why he stood her up for prom 10 years ago until like way too late into this book. And this was just a mediocre read. I'm gonna say a lot of these I gave 3.5 stars. I wasn't absolutely loving a lot that I read this month, so this just felt okay. 3.5 stars. I think I rounded it down to 3 on Goodreads. It just wasn't anything special. I am interested in going back and reading book 1 because the couple sounded like a lot of fun when we met them in here, but it was just fine. Then I read Exodus by Kate Stewart. I read this from a reading vlog where I read the first book I saw on TikTok. This is book 2 in the series, and I can't say too much about the plot without spoiling things. I just will say it is a romance with another person that wasn't in book 1. That's all I want to say, because I want you to be aware going into this that everything that was built in book 1 just kind of like went away, and that made me really sad reading this because I loved the romance in book 1 and I loved the characters in book 1, and we get a different love interest in here. I didn't love the love interest as much as I did in book 1, so that's why I ended up giving this one also 3.5 stars. I think I also rounded it down to 3 on Goodreads. I think it has potential of being better if book 3 really develops that relationship, but 6 years do pass in here, and our heroine comes back to town after leaving the town for 6 years, and I really liked seeing her as an adult in here instead of when she's 18/19, and watching her try to understand her life and romance that had happened before and now. And I'm still confused about this like whole secret thing that they're doing. I don't know if I'm supposed to understand what it is or not, but I don't know at all what these people are supposed to be doing, or like what kind of society thing they're part of. I don't know. Maybe we'll get answers in book 3. I'm excited to read book 3. I really love this series. I still recommend this book. I just edited a romance recommendation video where I do recommend this book because it is good, but because I loved book 1 so much, I just couldn't give this a higher rating. Another one that I gave 3.5 stars is Wild Women in the Blues by Denny S. Bryce. This one I wanted so much more from. It sounded really good. Our heroine is Anna Ray. She is a dancer, and she is trying out to be a dancer at this other club, and witnesses a murder happen, and the story goes on from there. And I feel like this was marketed with the title as like these women who are just wild and crazy and living the life to the fullest, and Anna Ray really doesn't. And she also is someone who has this like lavish career and is just this famous big name, and we also don't get that in this book. We know what happens to her, but this is a very short time period in her life in 1925 in Chicago, and we don't really get that. And the murder happens in the beginning, and we don't really circle back around to the murder until really far into the end. It just felt like things were just kind of trucking along. We get some suspense at the end, but really that's it. We do also flash back and forth between the past and 2015, where this guy is trying to uncover the truth behind this film he found that Anna Ray's in, to see if it's a missing film of this famous filmmaker. And so he keeps on meeting with her, and I felt like that plot was not needed at all. It really took away from the past chapters, and nothing was really fully developed with his storyline. He had lost his sister in a car accident that he felt was his fault, and he would like sometimes see her ghost, and then that was just kind of like forgotten. And Anna Ray had this huge secret that was revealed that I also felt like, what was the point of that? I still don't understand that. So this had a lot of potential and could have been really great. There were just things that I didn't love, so 3.5 stars. Then I read a great one, and that is In Deep Waters by F.T. Lukens. This one I've also talked about in a couple videos that are coming out later. I think I just posted one of my 5-star reads this year because this is 5 stars. It's going to come out in a later video this week or next week, but I've been pre-filming a lot because I've been super busy. So this one is a fantasy historical romance. I didn't know this was fantasy, but our hero is a 4th child to a royal family, and so he's on his coming of age tour, and he has a lot of magic. One of his siblings can change into a bird, but he has a lot of magic, and they keep it a secret because the last royal who had magic pretty much try to destroy the world and take it over. And so people are really scared of their family and scared of him, that he might have magic. So on his tour, they come across this burning ship and find this boy there, and he is chained to the ship, and they rescue him. Our main character, Tal, is put in charge of watching over him, and the story goes from there. It's so great. Tal grows so much throughout the story, really comes into his own, and really loves and values his magic throughout the story, and has to do a lot of things, like in a lot of dangerous situations, and try to get out of them, and people are trying to kill him, and it's so good. I loved it. The family aspect is amazing. He kind of feels like a little bit further apart from his family, but they grow really close through this. The ending's adorable. I love this so much. Just like, I love romances that take place at sea too, so this was just like everything to me. I cannot recommend this enough. You have to read it. Another 3.5 star read. I just feel like I can't give these 3 because 3-star books are ones that I just like really am just like meh about, but 4-star reads are like, oh, I definitely recommend this. I really liked it. So this is like between that. This is Float Plan by Trish Dollar. In the beginning, our heroine loses her fiance to suicide, and the first literal page is his suicide note to her, and so she is absolutely devastated, decides to go on a sailing trip they had planned together where it was going to end where they were going to get married. And so she goes alone, and I had so much anxiety in the beginning of this book because she has not enough skill to be sailing by herself, and so she literally was like, I hope I don't die overnight while I'm sleeping because I don't know if I even anchored this boat correctly. And I'm just like, how can you be so unprepared going somewhere like that, but she is just so grief-stricken and feels like she needs to do something, so she does that. Obviously, she realizes she needs help, so she finds Keen, who is a professional sailor. He actually lost his leg in an accident, and he now has a prosthetic leg, which has hindered his ability to get more jobs as a professional sailor. So he takes up her offer, and they go sailing together, and they do end up falling in love. I really wanted more from this romance. It was a super, super, super slow burn romance, and then went way too quickly in the end. Things wrapped up so fast in the end. This could have had more time in it. It's a pretty short book. It's just 250 pages. I feel like a lot more could have been added to the end, but I did appreciate how our heroine really grew to start living for herself and understanding what she wants out of her life. But the romance, I was just like, it felt very women's fiction-y for majority of the book, and then the romance finally sparked and it just like went by way too quickly. So 3.5 stars for this one. Then I listened to the audiobook, and my hoopla actually combined the novella with the actual book. So the first thing I read was Royal Bully by Rachel Van Dyken. I've been in the mood for mafia romances, so I checked out my library to see what it had, and this was one of them. This novella I actually really enjoyed. Our hero and heroine kind of get together very quickly. It is a novella though, so keep that in mind going into this. And she's a college student, and the I don't know how to explain this world that Rachel Van Dyken's created. It's a little over the top, which is why I didn't love the first official book in the series. This didn't have too much over the top, but it pretty much is a college where the mafia kids like rule the school, and it's a school for the mafia kids. Like, they own it. And I guess it's a spinoff of the Eagle Elite series, which I didn't read. It's supposed to be read as a standalone, but I was so confused with all the characters in the first book in this series that I would probably recommend reading the other series that I didn't, and I think I wanted to before getting into this. But Royal Bully, he ends up falling in love with this girl and bringing her home, and they're like nuts. They like threaten each other and beat each other up and like do things to each other, but they end up having to break up. One of his cousins, or two of the kids in the mafia, are never supposed to be together, and our main characters know that they are together. They're hooking up. He's heard them like declaring love for one another, and so his dad is like, you need to make sure they're not together. So him and the love interest in this book decide to break them up, and that's really the point of this story, is to show, because that's the couple in the next book, and they were broken up by the main character in this book. And so we see him and his love interest like basically fall head over heels super quickly, insta-lovey. But I thought this was fun. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I really did like this. But going into Ruthless Princess, I love this cover. I think this cover is gorgeous. All of the covers in the series are absolutely stunning, but this was way too over the top and soap opera dramatic for me. So everybody's like pretty much related to, and I was very uncomfortable with the fact that I think she actually kissed her actual cousin at one point in this book. But Selena, I think is her name. She is like mafia princess and like tells everybody whatever she wants, and they like rule the school. They even like backtalk a teacher, and like our hero does things with a girl like in public in front of the teacher, and like he can because he's the mafia prince. And I'm just like, what? Oh, it's Serena. I knew it was something with an S. It's Serena and Junior, and I just like feel like it was way too over the top with that. I'm just like, and I think the fact that it was new adult, it's in college, so I felt just it was very dramatic. And they can't be together, and obviously they are broken up now because of what happened in the novella, and it's just odd. I'm like, why can't these two be together? The reasoning was weird because like everybody knew they were hooking up with each other in the novella, and nobody did anything, but like God forbid they were in love, and it was just like weird. I don't know. I didn't love this. It was way too over the top, and like the parents would like hold a gun to their kid's head and be like, you need to prove your loyalty, and it was just weird. So I gave this 3 out of 5 stars, probably more than 2.5 out of 5 stars. I just didn't love this. Next, I listened to the audiobook of Trapped with the Mob Boss by Nicole Fox. I was just trying to look at a lot of different videos of mafia recommendations, and someone had recommended Nicole Fox, or it was like on their TBR, so I checked out my library and they had this one. This one was an okay read. I ended up giving it 4 stars. It wasn't bad. It was good, decent. Our heroine is kidnapped in the beginning because she is a senator's daughter, and our hero's dad is like a big mafia man, and he's helping him, and they had kidnapped her, and though like instantly they like do things physically, and you're like, okay, you were just kidnapped. So some people on Goodreads said like that was a little too much, but I didn't mind it. And they end up falling in love, her and the son of the guy that kidnapped her, and things get pretty crazy. She discovers some secrets about her dad, and the guy who kidnapped her really doesn't want to hurt her, and they end up like going around and like figuring out secrets about people and like running from people, and I just like the action in it. I need my mafia romances to have good action in them, good mafia content, or else I'm kind of bored. So this was decent. I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars. Then an audiobook I just devoured was Ever After Always by Chloe Leese. This is a marriage and trouble story. We have our heroine. She's a physical therapist and he is a professor. We meet him in the first book of the series, and they are at a point when we start the book where they are not talking, and she kind of kicked him out, and they end up going to therapy because part of the reason they're fighting is because they won't communicate with each other, especially about having a child. And so they are having a really hard time opening up and communicating with each other. She's really upset with something he did but won't tell him, and he doesn't understand why she's upset. But the family aspect of these books is phenomenal. I love how close the family is. They all end up going on vacation with the family, and obviously he's brought along. They've been married for like 10 years now, so it's definitely a marriage in trouble. They've had an established relationship. They really love each other, but they're just having trouble communicating, and it was great. It was amazing. She's also a plus size character, which I loved. He has a lot of anxiety, and so he also has to go understand how to communicate to her about his anxiety, and so it was amazing. 5 out of 5 stars. I love this. Then I read The Risk by S.T. Abbey. I cannot stand these covers of this series. I think that they don't look good. But this one, amazing. 5 out of 5 stars. It is a FBI profiler, serial killer romance, and the girl is the serial killer. He is the FBI profiler. She is actually killing people who have wronged her. Something really bad happened in her past. These men did something, and she is like, I am taking every single one of you down, and she is torturing them and killing them. And so it's dark. We have torture and killing, and we have flashbacks to what happened to her with these men, and the FBI profiler actually meets her at a coffee shop, and his friend hits on her. She denies him. He's like, who's this girl? Gives her his card, and they start dating, and he is like, you are just so perfect. You're so perfect. You don't care that I work so much, and you are so patient and just amazing. And she's like, huh, I'm not perfect. So there's so much that's just amazing in this book. It's really short. It's 100 pages, and it's a 5-book series. I think they're all about 100 pages. I'm planning on reading book 2 like literally today. I am obsessed. If you like Criminal Minds, she actually also ends up helping him profile a different case because she's really into that too. So it's amazing. I would definitely recommend checking this out. Then I read Dial A for Aunties by Jessie Q. Sutanto. This one is amazing. I talked about this a lot already in a few videos, but our heroine accidentally kills a blind date she had and freaks out, and her aunts help her hide the body, but they end up bringing the body in a cooler to the wedding that her and her aunts all are working at, and shenanigans ensue, and her ex from college, whose heart she broke that she didn't want to, is also there as the hotel owner, and they obviously are like, well, let's talk, and it's so funny. I laughed so many times in this book. It's hilarious and ridiculous, and I literally couldn't put it down. I loved it so much. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It was fun. It was just what I needed at the moment. This is literally rom-com material. Not so heavy on the romance. I think I did knock it down to 4.5 stars because I wanted more of that romance and a much more development of the romance there could have been, but it was fun. I definitely recommend picking this up. Then I read A Lady at Midnight by Tessa Dare. This is book 3 in the Spindle Cove series. I wasn't a fan of book 1, absolutely loved book 2, and kind of wasn't a fan of this one. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Our heroine, Kate, she is an orphan, and she is a spinster. She's living in Spindle Cove. She is a music teacher, and the commander there of the military has always kind of liked her and helped save her from a situation and helps bring her back into town because she was out of town, missed a ride, so he's there to help her. And when he brings her back to town, they realize there's a family there of a Marquess, and they are like, you are our long lost relative. The Marquess of the family had an affair with someone, and then he died, and so then they realized that he had a mistress who was pregnant with her, and they had this naked pregnant picture of her mom that looks exactly like her, so that's how they know she is related to them. And so to protect her reputation, I guess, the commander says, let's pretend like we're engaged and so I can protect you. And it goes from there, and it was just fine. I didn't love the relationship. I didn't feel as much of a connection to it, and it was kind of boring. Not a lot really happened in this book. A Week to Be Wicked, so many things happened. I was laughing out loud. It was such a good romance. I was obsessed with it. This one, it just was the opposite. It was slow. I didn't get why she liked him. He was kind of mean to her, just very stoic, and it just was not the best. So 3 out of 5 stars. I expected more and now I'm nervous, but I've heard book 4 in the Spindle Cove series is really great, so I'm kind of have high hopes for that. I've already reserved it from the library, so hopefully it comes in soon, but yeah, I was disappointed in this one. Then I read Deuces Wild by Christina C. Jones. This is book 2 in the Wild Aces series, the High Stakes series. Oh, it's technically book 3, but book 2 is like a novella, so I didn't read that. Book 1 was Ante Up, which I actually really enjoyed. This one, our heroine's an ex-assassin, and she is still working at a security company and trying to uncover things that happened to her in the like program she was a part of as an assassin, because she doesn't have a lot of memories, they're repressed, and then she sees someone at a job she's on who looks like her, and she freaks out and is trying to find this woman, and she ends up teaming up with a police officer and they have a romance together. In this one, I end up giving 3 stars. I really love the beginning. I was so into it, and then it just got really boring really quickly, and then there were so many things that they had to talk about. Like, there was 2 different groups and all these guys and who was working with who, but then this person was actually really working with this person, and I was confused a lot of the time. It was just a lot, and it was just a lot for me to follow, and it was definitely also kind of boring. I mean, there were a couple of interesting parts like in the beginning and the end, but the middle was just okay. I was expecting more from this and I kind of lost interest, so 3 out of 5 stars. Then I listened to the audiobook of Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates. This one was a recommendation from Jess Owens. She did a whole video about nonfiction books she loved, and this was one of them. The audiobook is super short, it's only 4 hours. The author narrates it himself, and it is pretty much a letter to his son about living as a black man in America, and I enjoyed it. I'm not going to rate this though. I am trying not to rate my nonfiction because I don't really have a way to rate the nonfiction that I read, because I'm relatively new to reading nonfiction for fun. So I did enjoy what he had to say and the things he talked about, so if that sounds interesting, I'd recommend picking it up. I enjoyed listening to the audiobook. Then I listened to the audio of She Drives Me Crazy by Kelly Quinlan. This is a sapphic enemies to lovers, actual enemies to lovers romance, young adult, and it is so good. So our 2 characters, we have Scotty and Irene, and Scotty is a basketball player, is still absolutely heartbroken over her ex who dumped her and then moved to a different school, and the beginning is them playing basketball against each other and Scotty's team just like losing miserably. Scotty is on the basketball team and they're not really good, so the school doesn't really care about the basketball team, but she ends up getting into a car accident with Irene, who is the head cheerleader, and they have a bad past because Irene really embarrassed her at a party last year, and so Scotty just hates her, and they get in a car accident, and their moms are like, hey, we live by each other, you guys are gonna drive each other to school, and so they do. And then Irene really needs money. She's a cheerleader. She wants to get athlete of the year and be taken seriously as an athlete, and she wants to get that so she can go to college and be a cheerleader, but she needs money for her car that she damaged because her parents are making her pay for it, and if she needs money she'd have to quit cheer. So Scotty says, I'll pay you the money for the car if you fake date me to make my ex jealous. So they fake date, they fall for each other, and it's so good. It's so good, and I loved the sports romance aspect of this. I love how Scotty was on the basketball team, and we got to see a lot of the basketball team and their practices and the dynamics with the school, and I love this. 5 out of 5 stars. Actual enemies to lovers, so they really did hate each other, but then Scotty realizes Irene is not the like mean girl she thought she was, and it was so good. I loved it. 4 more books. The next one I read was Yolk by Mary H.K. Choi. This one was hard for me because I don't like character-driven novels, especially when they're characters that are unlikable. So in this one, we have Jane and June, and I always forget who our main character is. Oh, and I put this in upside down. One sec. In the beginning, we see that Jane is dealing with an eating disorder. The author does give us an author's note about that, and we really don't get that until the very end. That's not really explored with Jane's character until the end. I would have loved more of what happened at the end to happen all throughout this book. Jane is just spiraling. She lives in a really crappy apartment. She has a really bad relationship with the roommate who she was hooking up with, but then he was really using her just to stay in the room, and he's not paying for her for anything. And she gets a call from her sister, meets up with her, and her sister has cancer, and they don't really have the best relationship, but her sister realizes how her life isn't really going that great, and they kind of start talking to each other, but they still don't have the best of relationship. Jane also meets someone from her past that they start hanging out, but then she's like, oh, I can't call him back or look at it, or I'm gonna leave him on red. And I'm just like, why are you playing these mind games with people? And she's like, oh, I definitely know he's thinking this and this, and she reads so much into things, and it's quite annoying. And you can tell she is dealing with a lot, and we know by the end she does have this eating disorder, and it's really graphic, specific scenes at the end, so if you're all sensitive to that, I would stay away from this book. But we have her finally coming to terms with her problem at the end and seeking help for that. But I just like didn't love this book because it's definitely like, it's character driven, it's slice of life. We just see them going about their daily lives. Things that I wanted to happen happened at the end, and then it ended, and I wanted so much more of that growth and exploration and development throughout the book instead of getting all of this story of them being broken and really not making the best decisions and not knowing how to handle things and just making mistakes, and then we get that growth at the end. I didn't really love that. I'm just not someone who loves reading books like that, so I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. If you are into that, you will probably really love this. I've seen rave reviews for this book, but as a reader, I don't like reading that, so 3 out of 5 stars. Then I read People We Meet on Vacation for that reading vlog I did, reading new romance releases, and I gave this 3.5 stars. I don't know why I just couldn't connect with this book. I ended up rounding it up to 4 stars because I feel like I had just minor complaints, but I just kept on complaining about them. This is Poppy and Alex, and they're best friends, and they've been best friends for 12 years, and we get flashbacks between now and every year leading up to this. They always go on vacation together, and they never get together, but we know something happened 2 years ago and they haven't spoken in 2 years, and so we get a lot of chapters of them in the past, which I felt like got kind of redundant. They were cute, they were fun, I like seeing their dynamic, but then I'm just like, okay, when are we gonna get things moving? We don't know until well in the book what happened 2 years ago, and I felt that was very anticlimactic. I was like, that's what happened that made you guys not talk for 2 years? And I get it's realistic because they don't live near each other, so if they were embarrassed and didn't want to talk to each other, they literally didn't have to talk to each other because they're never around each other. But I just felt like it was too slow burn for me, and Poppy was kind of annoying. So she just like kept on thinking things and like freaking out about things and wouldn't talk to him. Like they even like did something together and then didn't talk about it for the whole day, and she's like freaking out about it, and then she like talks to him, he's like, oh yeah, no, it's fine, and I'm just like, talk to each other. So I was just kind of annoyed. I think it went on too long. I think the slow burn was too slow burn for me. So I gave it 3.5 stars. And I thought I was being too critical because I think it's just because of the hype. If it wasn't so overhyped, I would have enjoyed this. So that's why I gave it 4 stars, because I want to give it the benefit of the doubt that I had super, super, super high expectations. I still enjoyed it. It was still a fun read. I really love their relationship. There were just some things that annoyed me. Then I listened to the audiobook of The X Talk by Rachel Lynn Solomon, and I gave this one 5 stars. This one was so good. Our main characters are Shay and Dominic, and there's a bit of an age gap. Shay, I think, is 29, and Dominic is like 23, and he just got hired onto the radio station that she's been working at, and he's already being treated as like the hot shot because her boss is a sexist misogynist, but she ends up, her segment is being cut, and she gives the idea, why don't we talk about dating and exes? And so they're like, okay, you guys can pretend to be exes since you argue so much and do the show. And so they end up doing it, spend more time together, start falling in love, and it was just so much fun. I've never read a romance with people on the radio, and Shay did lose her father when she was 18, so there are trigger warnings for grief in here. She still is very much struggling to come to terms with that because her mother is getting remarried right now, and she also just doesn't know what to do with her feelings for Dominic, and it's really, really cute. I love their moments together. I loved how the ending played out. I just really love this book. 5 out of 5 stars. Then I read The Vow by D. Rose. This is a novella on Kindle Unlimited, and I give this one 3 stars. It's a marriage of convenience, but it felt odd to me because our heroine is in college. She lost both of her parents in a car accident, and so it's really her and just her uncle, but they kind of have a rocky relationship, but he is an actor, so he's very famous, and she is struggling. She is in school. She is trying to work her job while still making good grades and affording everything, and so her uncle has a friend who's an actor. He has a sex tape with an ex released by his ex's new boyfriend, and he needs to clean up his image because he is finally producing, I think, his own, or directing his own movie instead of acting in it, and so they're threatening to pull that movie because of his reputation. And so the heroine's uncle is like, why don't you marry my niece? And because she needs stability, she needs some financial help, and she'll marry you and help fix your reputation. And it was fine. We actually, though, like skipped any progress in their romance. Like, they were meeting and she agreed to marry him, and then we skip everything that developed between them, and all of a sudden they're really into each other. And I was like, where did this development happen? She would mention things that happened that we didn't get to see on page, and I felt like those were important things we should have seen on page. And they entered this marriage of convenience thinking like they were actually going to be married and in love, which was new to me because typically people like do a marriage of convenience and be like, we'll just be married for a year or something and then divorce and it'll be fine, and then they fall in love. But here it's like, oh, we actually are spending forever together, and I'm like, what? So I don't know, the whole setup felt a little weird, and I just missed so much development between their romance that it was really hard to believe. And then we had half of the book almost them married and happy. And if you know me, I don't care about people being together and happy. I want the angst, I want them trying to figure out their romance. So 3 out of 5 stars for this one. And those are the romances that I've read so far this month. Let me know down below what you read, or if you've read any of these and what your thoughts are. I would love to hear. As always, thank you so much for watching, and have a good day. Bye.